here today. I'm Eric Stokin, Director of the Center for Social Science Scholarship and Associate Professor of Political Science. I'm thrilled to welcome you to the first lecture in our workshop series on demonstrating your impact beyond academia. The title of today's talk, Beyond the Journal, Turning Scholarship into Impact, signifies the important role that engaging outside of academia plays. I personally believe as an academic institution and as a faculty member, we should work to better translate what we do into meaningful insights for policymakers and speakers, and speak to a broader audience. At the Center for Social Science Scholarship, we sponsor events, trainings, and workshops that are important to social science scholars. Before we begin with today's talk, I want to call your attention to two upcoming events that may be of interest. First, our next speaker in the Demonstrating Your Impact Beyond Academia series will be Eric Ludke, Director of Capital Projects in the Office of the Secretary for the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. His talk, titled Talking Past Each Other, Connections and Disconnections Between States and Social Scientists, will take place virtually on Wednesday, October 22nd at noon. Second, if you're interested in learning how to better leverage large language models like ChatGPT for your own research, or want to learn about the R statistical programming language, this Friday at noon in the Public Policy Building, room 451, I'll be hosting the first session of our Computational Social Science series. We hope you'll consider joining us for these events. You can learn more about them by going to socialscience.umbc.edu or connecting with us on MyUMBC or through social media sites such as LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Facebook, and Instagram. A few housekeeping notes before we jump into today's session. First, please feel free to put questions in the chat throughout this afternoon's workshop, and we'll be sure to monitor those throughout the talk. Second, the session will be recorded, and the link will be sent out later this week. The speakers would like each of us to introduce ourselves and maybe talk a little bit about our experiences if we have engaged with policymakers or testified. So I'll ask you just to very briefly introduce yourself and your relevant experience. But let me go ahead and introduce our speakers first. Dr. Elizabeth Rigby is Associate Professor of Public Policy and Public Administration at George Washington University. Dr. Rigby's work examines the politics of inequality and redistribution, identifying conditions shaping the public policy's preference, examining the policymaking process that shapes health, education, and welfare policies, and assessing the consequences of these policy choices on the level of racial and income inequality in our society. Dr. Rigby has worked at the intersection of politics, inequality, and public policy in a range of roles in organizations, including the Senate Finance Committee, Project Vote Smart, Citizens for Missouri's Children, the National Center for Children and Families, and St. Louis Public Schools. Also joining us today is Mandana Mosezundagan. Sorry if I butchered that a little bit. She's the Director of Member Engagement at Scholar Strategy Network, where she helps university-based scholars join SSN and provides public engagement support to their network of nearly 2,000 members. Prior to her current role, Mandana was a Senior Communications Associate on the communications team, where she provided op-ed editing and pitching support to scholars, connected scholars to journalists, facilitated SSN workshops, and directed SSN's No Jargon podcast. Mandana holds a master's degree in English literature and a bachelor's degree in journalism. Before joining SSN, she was an English lecturer at San Jose State University and an English adjunct at Evergreen Valley College. Thank you both for joining us this afternoon. So as noted, I would love to just go around and invite you to introduce yourselves very briefly. And let me take a look and see, we can, I'm seeing a lot of chats coming in, so bear with me for one moment. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to go based on the tiles that I see. And I'll ask Jonathan if you could briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, yeah. My background is that I have a BA in political science. I have a master's in public affairs from the LBJ School of Public Affairs, and spent 31 years as a federal manager and director. I had many of those years at I was with various agencies. I started at GAO. Department of Justice was a lot of those years, Department of Homeland Security at the end, including 12 years of consulting at DOJ and at DHS. And actually, this is my first meeting at anything having to do with UMBC. I once had a dream of getting a Ph.D. at UMBC, but it won that custody battle. That was the other alternative. So, I'm particularly interested in the subject. How academia sees itself in terms of having an impact on our politics, on our government, on policy, and all the rest of it. So, thank you.
Great, thank you for joining us. Next, I'll go to Aubrey Jackson-Soller. She's our co-director, associate director at CS3.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name's Aubrey Jackson-Soller. I'm the associate director at CS3. I'm an associate professor in sociology, and my work relates to law and punishment, but I haven't worked directly with policy, so I'm very curious about that process.
Thank you. Amy Barnes.
Oh, hi. I didn't know you were going to call on me. I'm Amy. I'm the program coordinator for CS3. So I'm just here to keep the meeting going and record it. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Laura Antkowiak.
Hello. I'm having a remote work day from the beach. So as professional settings I would like here. I am a professor of political science and director of the Sondheim Public Affairs Scholars Program. I write about public policy and its politics and have some projects going on right now on family policy and social welfare policy, which is my attempt at this stage of my career to take some risks with a little bit more relevant work. But I need the extra kick in the butt to inspire me to get out of my administrative hole and do that. And I'm looking forward to it. And Elizabeth and I have had multiple encounters at conferences and other places over the years. So I'm so happy that you could be here today.
Thanks, Laura. I see Bree Lauka.
Sorry, my microphone took a second to get started. I'm Bree Lauka. Yeah, I work at Towson University as the director of assessment. And I've been working in higher ed for, 12, 13 years. I was an academic advisor for 10 years, and now I work in learning assessment in the provost office. And I took my first PhD class at UMBC last fall, and then decided not to continue in public policy with the PhD program, but I'm still very interested in how we measure the impact of higher education and who decides what those criteria are. So that is something I want to engage more in my professional work.
Great, very glad to have you here. Thank you. All right, I see Aliyah Khan.
Hi, my name's Elia, and I am a fifth-year doctoral student in the Clinical and Community Psychology program at UMBC. I have previously worked in intergovernmental settings, particularly the United Nations, so I have some experience, and I'm really interested in today's conversation.
Great, thank you for being here. Brian Kaufman.
How you doing? I'm Brian Kaufman, coming from the music department. I'm associate professor here and doing a tremendous amount of work related to in communities and also related to different social issues through music, engaging with our community and thinking also about how we connect that to policy change.
Great, thank you. Christine Mallinson, and would you like to also introduce the program that you're running at this point?
Sure, that's a really good idea. So thank you all. I'm Christine Mallinson, Assistant Vice President for Research and Scholarly Impact. I am a faculty member also in the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. I am in my current role helping lead a new program focused on how to build UMBC faculty skills in advancing and amplifying the visibility and impact of your work. So I will drop a link to the website where you can learn about more information. Would love to see as many applications as we can for this program. And all disciplines are welcome, and the deadline for application is October 20th. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks for dropping that link. So those were all the people I see visually joining us. If there's anyone else who would like to introduce themselves, please go ahead and do that now. Otherwise, if you want, maybe just drop it in the chat. All right, so let me turn it over to you guys, and maybe others can, continue to put in information. And if we have time at the end, if other people want to introduce themselves, then that's great. So I'll kick it over to you. Either Mandana, are you going to speak first, or Elizabeth?
I'm going to speak first, and I am just trying. I am trying to pull up my slides. That's the slight delay, so I apologize.
Oh, no
Go
problem.
back here. I think hopefully this will work. Let's see. Do you all see a slide that says moving beyond policy implications?
Yes, it's sort of in that full view where we can see all the other slides running.
Oh, really? Yeah, thank you for letting me know. It isn't like that here, so let me just, I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
Um,
Every platform is different.
I know, I am not used to anything other than Zoom, which I
Mhm.
apologize about.
No.
Okay, you know what? Let me try sharing one other way, and then we'll just go on if this doesn't work.
Yeah. So oh yeah. I think if you go to the bottom, to
Yeah.
the right, maybe that there's a little presenter mode I see as an icon.
The problem is that I did that. So I'm in present, like I can see presenter mode.
Okay. But it's not hard to see right now. So.
Okay.
Elizabeth, I was having the same problem. So yeah.
Okay. Is it just that you can see my slides on the side?
Yeah, that's all.
You can't like see pictures of my dog or child or anything like that.
Nope.
Okay. Wonderful.
I'd
Great.
like to, but nope.
Okay. I'll just stick with this for now then, in the interest of time. It does sound like people have a wide range of experiences already working in the world, not only inside the university, as well as a number of people have primarily experience working inside the university, but on very policy relevant topics. And that is great because that is exactly what we wanted to talk about today. So if you do academic research, especially on many of these social science and policy relevant topics, we write these policy implications at the end of our papers, but they often sit at the end and rarely go anywhere. And even if our paper gets scholarly attention, those policy implications may not. And so the question is really, how do we move from these implications on paper to influence in the world? And so let me just go back for a sec. I want to talk about different ways that academics can do this. And then I want to also tee up a little talk about the Scholar Strategy Network, which I have found to be an incredible way to engage with this. But first, I want to just call attention to the fact that academics choose different lanes of policy engagement. Sorry, there's a little typo there. And I think we don't talk about this as much. We talk about you either are just an academic or you're an academic and you're engaged. But the academics often focus their engagement in different ways. And I think of it as a continua, from talking about your direct findings to just sort of applying our toolkit of skills that we have primarily as social scientists. So I want to talk about these 4 lanes because sometimes, actually, usually I think people are more comfortable operating in one of these lanes than the other. So the first lane is the direct findings lane, in which you have data you gathered or you analyzed, you have findings you know best, and you can share that evidence from your own research. An example is a housing scholar testifies on eviction outcomes after she completes a study on that topic. The advantages of this lane for academics, particularly who are new to more engagement, you can maintain like a high level of credibility. You can defend quite easily what you say. You can answer questions because you know this work probably better than anybody else. Typically, your work has already been peer reviewed. It's a very safe lane for sharing your findings. The limits of operating only in this lane is it can be a narrow scope. You know, you're finding, I can think of my research, one paper might speak to one very small part of what a city council person is trying to do. And I may not really be able to speak to that much more with my findings. So this actually leads to this temptation to kind of overclaim or being asked questions that are broader than what you kind of came in to talk about. So this is one lane. The second lane I think of as a related field. So here you're speaking to kind of broader policy debates. So a housing scholar, that same housing scholar can also probably knows a lot about housing and can share what is known on rental assistance or affordable housing. The advantage is this is more often relevant to real debates, and it can build sort of a reputation for being a go-to person who can answer questions. And it's much more likely that this type of engagement is needed rather than waiting for, you know, that one hearing a year where somebody needs to know about my exact research. The limits is it requires a lot of humility and synthesis skills and the ability to think about what you can say about the field and what is known and what is outside that scope. And if you do research on that exact area, sometimes it's even, you can feel, I felt a little more conflicted about, can I really say that? Because I know about all the complications as well. So the third lane is like a big picture framing. So this is where you can connect your expertise to larger conversations. There's even more opportunities to do this. So a housing scholar can also probably write an op-ed and speak to policy debates going on about inequality, climate resilience, even democracy. This really expands your influence. You can build interdisciplinary coalitions, but your credibility as an actual academic who's a scholar on that topic can get stretched further. So some people are not as comfortable with that. And then a fourth lane that is kind of broader, but in a way, I think quite comfortable for an academic, is to take the skills that we have and engage in real life debates or processes or policy making around those things. So a housing scholar may continue to do her research on eviction rates, but she may be able to work with a public health nonprofit to evaluate a program that they're doing. And the advantage of this is you can be very flexible, you can be very valuable, it can spark later partnerships, including partnerships that can feed back into your own research. And the limits is it's less visibility for your substantive research. It can be a lot more time and investment and work, but it is a way to sort of make the link between more academic research and the kind of work that's being done out in the world. I apologize that there is noise outside of my window right at this exact moment. So this is an area in which I have actually done a lot of, I have done a lot of engagement, in that a lot of my academic research is more on state or national level, but I've done a lot of DC based local work on specific DC areas. And I've been able to use the same skills and the same often data and the same ways of thinking about problems that I do in my academic research, but on different topics. And I feel a little less conflicted about where is that line between what I can speak to or not, by sort of working on related topics. So that would probably be more the lanes 3 or 4. I cannot see in the chat if there's any questions or any comments anybody wants to make. Eric or somebody, can you just interrupt me if that happens?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
no problem.
Wonderful. So these are kind of the 4 lanes. So this is something to think about. What lane do I want to operate in as an academic engaged out there in the world? And then there is a long menu of engagement models, like different stuff you can do. This is a set of 8 things. There are so many more as well, but I want to highlight just a few of them. So I think one of the things we think about a lot is public scholarship, media engagement, op-eds, being on podcasts, being available for media interviews, writing blogs and examples, economist writing for a public audience on an economic policy issue. And for each of these, I want to highlight a few like easy first steps. So you can draft an op-ed on your recent findings. You can work with your university comms or PR team. It sounds like the Research and Scholarly Impact Initiative is probably a great resource for this as well. You can share findings weekly on something like LinkedIn, where you can talk about, an important concept from the literature. So you can get involved in this discussion in kind of first step ways. Other types of engagement is more like policy advising. So actually advising agencies or nonprofits or foundations or legislatures on decisions that they're making. So this can be kind of a formal mode, like the people who sit on the National Academy of Science panels. It also can be more informal consultation. You have reached out to a coalition working on eviction rates, and you're available to answer questions or to kind of talk through different issues with them. I'm involved in a network like this on a voting reform, where when academic papers come out, I'll often write them into more like a 1-pager and talk about what their limits are and what they say and how they contradict or reinforce the advocates' talking points. So easy first steps here is to create a 1-page policy brief on something you know about, or schedule just a 20-minute call or a coffee or lunch with a staffer, with somebody working on these issues, and signing up for testimony, although I'm going to highlight that in particular in just a minute. It also sounds, I'm not sure, I know somebody mentioned sort of doing community-based research. So this is another way that academics can have more of an impact in the world, is to integrate these practitioners and communities from the very beginning of your research. So this might be a public health scholar partnering directly with, neighborhood leaders. If this is something you want to think about doing in your research, of course, this is a whole field and something that other people know more about than I do. But some of the ways to start are you can conduct stakeholder interviews. Maybe you're just doing quantitative research on something, but you just want to know how it's playing out in your local community, and you want to meet with some neighborhood advocates and find out their perspective. Some of these things actually might be more helpful for improving our research even than having an impact. Attending a coalition meeting, working on a more of a partnership agreement with a group. You can submit regulatory comments, which is providing expert responses during agency rulemaking processes. You can sign up for regulatory alerts and work with advocacy organizations or coalitions that are often calling for these. I have been the recipient of comments like this, and it is very helpful when there's an academic who sort of just lays out some of the issues, sitting beside more interest groups that are looking from a certain perspective. And finally, the last thing I wanted to highlight is legislative testimony, which may seem intimidating, but is actually very needed, especially at the state and local level. So this is where the Maryland legislature might be considering a bill, and they want to have people testify on the bill at the committee, and you can go and apply what you know to inform the legislative debate. This is very important in Maryland, where every bill that is heard in committee every bill needs to be heard in committee with testimony, which is not true everywhere else. So advocates are often looking for people who will come in and be an expert testifier and are happy to help you. The DC Council doesn't have that requirement for our bills, but we do have annual performance and oversight hearings where advocates, agencies, legislators are often looking for people to come in and testify. So these are situations that are great to capitalize on. In Maryland, that's almost all in January, February, maybe beginning of March. In the DC Council, it's basically March, April, May is when all those multiple hearings happen. So you can sign up for hearing notification lists for the committees you're interested in. You can draft a one-page testimony. You can just submit written testimony in the beginning if you don't even want to go and deliver it. So these are all different ways that people get involved. But here is my biggest recommendation, is to work with intermediary organizations. So these are coalitions that are already working on an issue, advocacy groups, research brokers. What these groups are doing is they're already translating research, they're connecting with policymakers and journalists, they're convening events. They know what issues can actually come onto the agenda. They know what type of information is needed. And there's absolutely no reason that we have to recreate the wheel from the ivory tower or an academic institution. We can come in and partner and assist. And what we can do is add often a credibility, bring data, call attention to issues. And what they can do is save a ton of time for those of us who want to go out and speak on these issues and share our expertise and findings. They can really help connect you. And there are a number of places I would look for these intermediaries. If there's a specific issue that you're interested in, especially if it's something that is being discussed in the legislature, there is almost definitely a coalition working on that issue that you can join. Just get on their email list and you will start hearing about, we need people to speak on this issue. We're having this event. We want to put in regulatory comments. And you'll be getting updates on what's happening. So these coalitions are a really great way to do it. And then there are sort of research broker efforts. And it sounds like you all have one being developed at the university. And the one that I am very involved with is the Scholar Strategy Network, which we have our director of membership here who will share with you all more about SSN, we call it, and how to become a member, which, by the way, is free and easy. And what it does is it provides you a lot of technical assistance with all these types of engagement that I mentioned. So we've had workshops on how to write regulatory comments, and there have been efforts to academics can work with the national staff and they will help you shape your op-eds and place your op-eds and things such as that. And you'll get a better overview. But as a member, I'll just tell you, it is incredibly helpful, and it has allowed me to engage in a lot of policy debates that I think I just wouldn't have time or knowledge or expertise to know how to engage. And so there's a national organization you would join. And then if you live or work in Maryland or DC, we strongly recommend and invite you to also become a member of our local chapter, where we do focus more on testifying and working on these issues at the Maryland legislature and the DC Council. And we also do a lot of networking and socializing and helping people connect with others who are also trying to work at this intersection of academics and real world impact. So this is just sums up my main 4 points. Policy implication sections aren't enough. Y'all know that, or you wouldn't be here. You can choose your lane. You can decide how to engage and then work with intermediaries to save you time and help you engage in effective ways. Your impact can be really small. You can write a 1-page brief, a 3-minute testimony, or just have a single conversation with an advocate or an alum who works in certain areas. Those are often great people to connect with. And our goal is to move from implications on paper to influence in practice.
Great, thank you so much. And I know we're going to transition over to Mandana, but there was a question that came in, so I figured as we're getting the slides ready. How are the 4 lanes you discussed developed? Are they a general consensus, or do they only exist in academia?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Because I should have said, I just made up those 4 lanes. I just noticed that there are these 4 different ways. So thank you, because I should have clarified that. I think people often talk about engaging in policy as if you don't have a choice on the scope of what you would engage and talk about. And so, I mean, the lanes I actually just sort of thought was a helpful metaphor. But basically what I think of is you could just do so much work. You could do all the types of engagement all on your own research specifically, or you could do all that engagement on other policy issues that have similar issues to your own research and be so engaged and actually never really go public and talk about it, or maybe you have more room to make kind of recommendations and engage in advocacy as well when there's actually a little bit of that distance. And for me, like, I study a lot of state and federal social programs like Medicaid, and so it's been quite easy to do a lot of my research on Medicaid and food stamps and other things like that, and then to do a lot of local advocacy work on our foster care finance reform. And it's very similar issues, and it gives me great insight into my own research on these other programs. And then it also gives me great insight and examples for teaching. I didn't even mention that. And insights into what our students need to go out and work in that world for our master's students. And so I guess I just think those are 2 different modes. And then I kind of was thinking there's these sort of 2 in between modes. But yes, that is not official. You can put Rigby 2025. No, I'm just kidding. Do not. Just but I am happy to discuss that or refine that if anybody is interested, because I do think hopefully it makes people feel like they have more control over what they would be asked to do by sort of thinking about what lane you're in. People probably usually talk about it as terms of like ethics, like how far do you go in extrapolating from your data? And that is an important question, but that's a really hard question. And I think thinking about operating in one of these 4 lanes is easier.
Great, thank you. All right, well, Mandana, do you want to make your presentation?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I am actually not going to share my slides. I had some issues with it earlier, and I don't want to take up too much time just pulling it all up. I only had a few slides anyway, so I'm just going to share with you all. I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes or so, share some general points about the organization that Elizabeth already introduced you to. I want to just say first, I really appreciate the different types, the 4 lanes of public engagement, Elizabeth, that you spoke about. I thought that was a really great analogy, because absolutely, there really are a variety of ways to engage, and it's certainly not one size fits all. There are pros and cons to consider for all the different lanes and individual preferences, and you have to think about your area of research and your goals. But I'm here to talk more broadly about where you can receive hands-on support for any type of public engagement. And it is through our organization, the Scholar Strategy Network. As Elizabeth mentioned, we are a nonprofit, and we're wholly focused on offering support to researchers who are trying to take their research outside of the academy. So I want to just provide a little bit of background, a little bit of history. SSN, as we also call ourselves, was founded in 2011 by a group of social scientists from across the country who really wanted to bridge the gap between research and policy. And the network was built on findings from the founding members' research, which shows that voluntary federated networks often drive social and political change in the US. And so the idea is that because important public decisions are being made at every level of government, federal, state, local, that means that organizations aiming to impact government decision-making should be able to act at all of those levels as well, or at the very least have a good understanding of which level they are targeting and why. So at our most general level, Scholar Strategy Network brings together scholars, policymakers, and journalists with the goal of promoting the use of research evidence to improve policy and strengthen democracy. And you'll hear that phrase, if you join SSN, you'll hear that phrase from us a lot, improving policy and strengthening democracy. It is just that overarching goal that that our scholars have. They believe, the vast majority of our scholars believe that their research has important policy implications, and they're trying to get it out there in front of the right audiences. And in our current political times, that for a lot of scholars is a challenge, and SSN is continually thinking about ways that we can provide additional support and protection to scholars in the current times that we're in. But I also just want to mention that, because we are a federated network, we have 36 chapters across the country. And as Elizabeth mentioned, one of those chapters is our wonderful Maryland, DC chapter, led by my wonderful co-facilitator, Elizabeth, alongside 2 other co-leaders. So Elizabeth leads one of our chapters, the Maryland, DC chapter. And our chapters allow us to focus on both the local expertise and relationship building, as well as the capacity to share learnings, resources, and our broad network at the national level. So what do I mean by that? For example, if one scholar is working on a particular policy issue that's relevant to multiple states or localities, we can help bridge those efforts. Or if scholars in one state are experts on a policy in another state, we can connect those scholars to local efforts. So I want to talk about what it looks like to be an SSN member. What does the support that you receive actually look like? What are the perks of membership? So as a member, you have access to our national staff, and there are a number of items that you can reach out for support on, and I'm going to talk about some of these items. So one, as Elizabeth alluded to earlier, is writing support. So if you are putting together a policy document or a media document like an op-ed, we have national staffers who are happy to work with you on these documents, going through multiple drafts with you, providing inline edits and feedback until your piece is polished and ready to go. And then connected to that, we also provide outreach support. So once you have your op-ed ready to go, actually pitching it, right, to news outlets that would reach the target audience that you're trying to reach. And our comms team, which they're the department that provide media engagement support, they would help you to figure out what are the best news outlets to reach out to. Are the issues that you're focused on connected to local or state or federal policy? So that is going to affect what type of news outlet you may choose. And then we have opinion editor contacts all over the country. So we really take advantage of that to help our members and our in-process members. So we pitch on behalf of our incoming and current members to increase the likelihood that these opinion editors see your pitch, right? They're inundated with requests, with pitches. And so if they see an email from an address that they recognize, it's much more likely that they open it, right? And as I mentioned, we have relationships with a lot of them. And then for policy documents, our policy team at SSN is always happy to help you share your recently published policy brief or other type of policy document with those who you're actually trying to reach, rather than assuming that your target audience is going to see it. Being really proactive, right? And trying to get their attention, finding the right contacts, and figuring out how to reach out to them. And then, ideally, that means you get to set up some meetings with stakeholders, policy actors, advocacy organizations, whoever you may be trying to reach. And of course, setting up meetings means that you have to then be prepared to go into that meeting and speak to this person, to this policy actor, for example. And we realize whether, it's your first time meeting with a policy actor or a journalist, or you've done it lots of times, it can still be a nerve-wracking process. So we offer interview and meeting prep. You can get hands-on support from our national staff, just going over your key points, figuring out exactly what you want to focus on going into that meeting, getting advice from us about, what to expect from these types of meetings. We also provide coaching and strategy sessions, again, one-on-one. So maybe you want to write an op-ed or a policy brief, but you don't quite know what kind of angle to take before you actually, put pen to paper. And so you can meet with one of our national staffers to figure out what the right angle would be to take for your piece. And we're always happy to help with that. And last but not least, we're also always here to provide list making support. So once you have your recently published op-ed or policy document, thinking about specifically who you want to share that piece with, right? If you want to send out emails linking to that recently published piece, first of all, we are happy to help you craft that email in a way that's engaging and compelling and gets the attention of those who you're trying to connect with, but also just finding contact information, which can be difficult sometimes, right, with folks in the policy space. So we're happy to help you create a list and then work with you to reach those folks. So these are just some of the perks that you receive as an SSN member that I wanted to go over. But I also want to talk about things that we may come to you with, and that can be broken into two different categories. So one is opportunities to connect with policymakers, civic leaders, or reporters based on incoming requests that we receive. We do from time to time, pretty frequently, get requests from policy actors or reporters saying, you know, I'm focusing on this particular issue. Do you have any experts in your network who I can chat with? And so we go through our database and we find the right academics. And so we may reach out to you and ask, are you interested? Are you available to meet with this person? Our comms team may also reach out to you in anticipation of a particularly timely topic in the news. For example, the release of court case decisions. We may ask you to be a part of a list of available experts for reporters covering that topic. So yeah, and then one other thing I want to mention is, you know, SSN National will have a range of events and trainings available to you as well to build your skills as publicly engaged scholars. So you may receive invites from us as well pretty frequently to our events. And this is all at the national level. There's a whole host of other benefits and perks associated with having a local chapter in your region that can offer you in-person training, networking with other publicly engaged scholars, and skill building opportunities that I know Elizabeth briefly mentioned as well from her chapter that she can offer you. But I want to just add here that there is no obligation for you to take the requests that may come your way from us or to attend our events if it's not a good time for you, if you don't think that your expertise is relevant for a request. You know, membership is really what you can and want to make of it. And we realize how busy academics are. And so we don't want to put pressure on you to engage on certain issues at a certain time unless it makes sense for you to do so. We're here to help you, to support you with your public engagement. And I just want to really quickly give a high-level overview as well of the process of joining. If you are sitting here and thinking, you know, I am interested to join SSN, what's next? I'm going to provide a link in the chat that goes over the membership guidelines and steps to join. So I'll share that after I am done going over some things with you. But there's essentially two things that we need from you to join the network. The first is for you to complete a profile form that highlights your area of expertise and any experiences you have working with policymakers, civic leaders, and the media. And by the way, if you have no experience yet, that's what we're here for. We just want to know, it helps us to know your background with public engagement. And so this information is the basis of your online public profile on SSN's website. And then step 2 is putting together a new media or policy piece with the support of our staff that highlights a topic of your research. So membership contribution options are policy briefs, memos, op-eds, written or oral testimony, public comments. These are various types that you can choose from. And the guide that I'm going to be sharing, as I said in the chat, offers detail and information about each of these 5 types of contributions. And once these 2 steps are completed, then you are officially an SSN member, which means we will upload your profile to our website. You'll be added to your chapter page, and we'll provide introductions to your chapter leadership team so that you can get connected locally. You'll also be added to our member digest. It's our membership newsletter that I send out every month, and that just provides updates on the national network and ways to get involved. And then last, I just want to share briefly the why behind the process, why we have these 2 steps in place for membership. So SSN as an organization does not collect any membership dues. Membership is free. This is just an organization that was created to support scholars, and we have funders who really believe in our mission and keep us going, so we don't collect any kind of monetary fee from our members. The resources at our national offices, you know, are again, free for any member. And we actually fund the local chapters to provide programming and opportunities for engagement. This is a value that's been core to our model since the early days. But we also want to make sure that membership has some value and weight to the folks who decide to join. So therefore, there's the small quote unquote cost to participating, which is filling out our profile form and working on a member contribution. But we see these two steps as more than a cost, because one, as you build your profile on SSN's website, which includes your written policy or media contribution, you're building a resource for policymakers, civic leaders, and journalists who are looking to connect with experts interested in doing policy engaged work. So they can search our website, they can search using tags to get a sense of the experts we have, and they may reach out to you directly, or they may reach out to us to connect. It's just a good way to establish yourself as a scholar who's interested in making these connections and having these conversations. And then we also view the process of writing a policy or media piece as a skill building opportunity, given that you receive a number of written resources and one-on-one support from our staff as you put together a draft of your piece. And lastly, regardless of whether you're new to policy engagement or you're a seasoned expert, we view the process of joining as an opportunity to be activated or reactivated into engaging with a current policy issue, research topic, or something that is particularly timely in the news. So this was a shortened version of my department's info session that we provide through our membership programming. And if you're interested to join, you can check out our membership page. And also, if you go to our membership page, you'll see there's a link to fill out the profile form. So I am just going to put it in the chat as soon as I'm done talking. And if you have any questions about SSN or the membership process, and if we don't have time for it now, you can always reach out to me anytime. I'll put my email in the chat as well. But yeah, that is what I wanted to go over. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And we'll open it up to questions. I did have one, which I think is, a common refrain when we think about translating our scholarship into public engagement, which is about the sort of incentive structures. I think SSN seems to be doing a lot to minimize the cost associated with that kind of engagement. But could you talk about the short and maybe long-term benefits of actually engaging this way? And then we'll open it up to other questions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, ultimately it's about you as an academic. What is your goal, right? If your goal is to take your research outside of the academy, and if you believe that you have research findings and you have research-based arguments that, should make impacts on policy, and you want to figure out strategies, ways to use your research to bring about changes that need to happen, then this is why we're here. This is why we do what we do, and we provide the support that we do. And we just help individual scholars figure out, like, what is the best way, what is the best strategy for you based on your research to increase the likelihood that you are able to make that impact. And if I had if I had like a full hour, I would go through, I would share examples of the kinds of impacts our scholars have been able to make. We have scholars in our network who've been able to make real impacts on policy decisions at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level. And it's just really exciting to see. And it's the most rewarding part of my job, and why I love being at SSN and doing the work that I do is, being able to see scholars do something with their work. And, sometimes it is a long process. It's a waiting game. It doesn't happen overnight. But I think especially now more than ever, this kind of work really is critical. And I know that, early this year, we had a lot of scholars in our network who were feeling disillusioned and overwhelmed, especially if their research has federal policy implications. And they were thinking, like, what is the point? And we understand that some people feel that way. But really, our perspective on this is that your work needs to continue. It is crucial that your work continues right now. And it may be a couple of years, right, before you see something happen as a result. And maybe if your work has federal policy implications, and you don't think it's worth your time to engage with policy actors at the federal level right now, then maybe you focus your attention on advocacy organizations that are invested in the issues that you're invested in, right? And it just takes time to build those relationships. SSN's philosophy is that in order to bring about the changes that you're hoping to see with your research, it really does boil down to relationships, relationship building, and relationship building takes time and being strategic about who you're building relationships with. So I hope that helps. And Elizabeth, if you want to add on to that as well.
I'll just say something quickly about the incentives in academia. It is true that service work of all sorts, including policy work, is not, usually factored into tenure and promotion. But I do just want to say it does help in a lot of ways, because, universities right now are trying really hard to show the relevance of what we do in higher education. And this is a big part of that. And getting, media attention or sites, or being able to say you worked on a bill, or, it does demonstrate both the it is a kind of a proof of concept for the quality of what you are actually doing as a scholar, that I do think is appreciated and does matter. In addition, as I said, you get a lot of insights and examples and connections with people that help with teaching. And then the most important thing is you might realize something. I will speak for myself. I have realized things about the phenomenon that I study that I did not know otherwise, and that I can incorporate back into better research questions, different models, different studies that are actually getting at something that needs to be known, and not only just like following theory to the next kind of research question. And, I don't know for sure, but I think you could make a case that those three, if you work through SSN or another intermediary that makes it easy for you, I think that the small time invested is probably saved for me in like more fruitful research and easier to teach, and plus excitement about the topics that I am working on. So I'm not sure that it's as bad of a time suck and you don't get rewarded for it as we sometimes worry. And with the SSN in particular, which obviously is my preferred way to engage, amazing scholars on all different topics are in that network. And those are great people to read your papers or to connect with or to be your tenure reviewers. And they're people who will understand that you're doing some public scholarship along with possibly more traditional scholarship. So they're even more helpful in that way. And I think there's a lot to be gained, even if it does take, it is an extra thing that you may be doing.
Great, thank you so much. So I know we are just about at the 1 o'clock hour. I did want to mention that our next session, so thank you, Amy, for dropping the link in. If you're interested in this series, again, we'll have Eric Ludke join us. One, I want to thank you both, but if there are questions and if you guys are able to stick around for a little bit, I'm certainly happy to have those now as well. But thank you guys very much for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody, for your interest. And yes, I'm happy to stay on. I see a couple people have hands up.
Oh, great. Let me see. And I am losing battery, but
let's see. I can see who does.
If you see them, sure. Yeah, just feel free to call on.
Oh, no, maybe I. If you have your hand up, feel free. Can you unmute and just tell us your question?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Just coming from the field of music, I'm just wondering, are you all working at all with artists in any way who may not be who may be working in other formats, even beyond some of the ones that you shared? I'm just curious to hear more about that.
So I will say we don't, I off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone from a music background right now, but we do have a variety of disciplines and areas of expertise. And, you know, if you believe that you have work that has a public engagement type, you know, goal attached to it, there's a way to engage publicly, there's research that you feel you need to share with non-academic audiences, whatever your discipline may be, we are happy to support you in that.
Great. Are there other questions? All right. Well, seeing none, again, thank you guys so much for taking the time to join us today. Really appreciate you being here. Elizabeth, nice to see you again. Elizabeth was actually on my doctoral dissertation, former
Yes.
professor, so great to see you here.
Great to see you thriving out there in the world, working on these issues. So thank you.
Well,
Pleasure.